Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. To every nurse, every doctor, every soldier, every essential worker, we salute you. Yeah, yeah. Shout out to the K-Plus heroes out there. Just know we appreciate you. Oh yeah. Reaching out to the unsung heroes without fear. We pray that God protect you everywhere. It's not easy on the front line. You have to put your life on the line. It's sticky on the front line. Risking your life to save mine. And you're working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line. So we take our hats them off. We salute you, each and every one of you. Because you go to work for us, please stay at home for you, so that we can see this through. So meanwhile we quarantine and chill. You holding down a rigorous chill for us to be safe. So I say hooray to all the K-Plus heroes out there. Just know we appreciate you. Oh yeah. Reaching out to the unsung heroes without fear. We pray that God protect you. Oh yeah. It's not easy on the front line. You have to put your life on the line. It's sticky on the front line. Risking your life to save mine. And you're working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line. So, we thank you for your braveness, your courageousness, performing your noble acts. You do it selfless, helping out the helpless and defenseless. We could go on and on, the stories are endless. You're relentless in the process. Going in the storm, want us to perform, putting yourself in harm's way. So how could we ever repay all the K-Plus heroes out there? Just know we appreciate. Sure. Oh yeah. Reaching out to the unsung heroes without fear. We pray that God protect you everywhere. It's not easy on the front line. You have to put your life on the line. On the front line, risking your life to save mine. And you're working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. To every nurse, every doctor, every soldier, every essential worker, we salute you. Yeah, yeah. Shout out to the K-Plus heroes out there. Just know we appreciate you. Oh yeah. Reaching out to the unsung heroes without fear. We pray that God protect you everywhere. It's not easy on the front line. You have to put your life on the line. It's sticky on the front line. Risking your life to save mine. And you're working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line. So we take our hats them off. We salute you, each and every one of you. Because you go to work for us, please stay at home for you, so that we can see this through. So meanwhile we quarantine and chill. You holding down a rigorous chill for us to be safe. So I say hooray to all the K-Plus heroes out there. Just know we appreciate you. Oh yeah. Reaching out to the unsung heroes without fear. We pray that God protect you. Oh yeah. It's not easy on working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line. So, we thank you for your braveness, your courageousness, performing your noble acts. You do it selfless, helping out the helpless and defenseless. We could go on and on, the stories are endless. You're relentless in the process, going in the storm, want us to perform, putting yourself in harm's way. So how could we ever repay all the K-plus heroes out there? Just know we appreciate.
Sure.
Oh yeah, reaching out to the unsung heroes without fail. We pray that God protect you everywhere. It's not easy on the front line. You have to put your life on the line. It's sticky on the front line, risking your life to save mine. And you're working overtime to give us peace of mind. Giving all you got so the pieces align on the front line. On the front line.
Hey, watch out now. Big up to Danny. Hey, follow me now. I hear says Malamaya. Hey, put ya now. Mad summer. Hey, yo, public service statement. Hey, watch out. As long as there's blood within my veins and there is air within my lungs, God bless me with the rain, so now you can't call me no nuns. As long as me ears I hear and feel vibration and the drums. Yo, as long as me heart and come, me down the boss and me short of funds. My faith is in my own hands, me bring it to me thumbs. Me foot them on me and them me a kick and me a punch. I shall not relent, all when I'm walking with a hunch. All when me hear get grey up and not see nothing on me guns. I just say, oh yes, as long as I got my head, I said the Lord shall grant me the strength, boy, and that shall be my way. Hey yo, well I man I say, oh yes, as long as I got my head, I pray to the Lord for the strength. Oh yes, and that shall be my way. As long as I got my head, you know don't hear me complain, so me shout a word. Long as me lungs them and me kidneys and me heart a word. And from me brain a word, that mean me can do smart a word. See from me back a word, tomorrow me gone back a word. Hey yo, big up all them and them pan the farm a word. We have the cutlass and the file them and the fork a word. Big up all taxi man, pan robot and pan shot a word. Time is money, so I am a working on the clock a word. Boy, as long as I got my head, I said the Lord God grant me the strength, boy, and that shall be my way. Hey,
positive. Learn how to love. Stay positive, you stay positive. Praise the Most High and don't do the negative. Stay positive, you stay positive. Learn how to love one another. These drugs will kill you, believe me. No hugs, these drugs really tricky. Just look and see the result of a big, big problem that's so hard to be solved. Worldwide, it's the same because of crack and cocaine. Youths die in a young age. Time's fast and still there's no change. And with your life you pay. So tell me, what do you gain when you're leaving your parents in pain? And tell me, what do you gain? Don't you know life is not a game? So stay positive, you stay positive. Praise the Most High and don't do the negative. Stay positive, you stay positive. Learn how to love. Stay positive, you stay positive. Praise the Most High and don't do the negative. Stay positive, you stay positive. Learn how to love. Don't tell me it's people make you do that. Don't tell me no job make you do that. Don't tell me love make you do that. Cause you is a man of your own. Don't tell me bad vibes make you do that. Don't tell me people grudge make you do that. Don't tell me just fun make you do that. Cause you is a man of your own. But look where you're sitting on the ground. Tell me, is that a thing that make you proud? You used to be so wise and you used to be so nice, and right now you're so paralyzed. So tell me, what do you gain when you're leaving your parents in pain? And tell me, what do you gain? Don't you know life is not a game? So stay positive, you stay positive. Praise the Most High and don't do the negative. Stay positive, you stay positive. Learn how to love. Stay positive, you stay positive. Praise the Most High and don't do the negative. Stay positive, you stay positive. Learn how to love.
Music is the food of love, you know. Uplifting sound for your mind, body, heart, and your soul, yeah. It's a roots rock reggae meditation. Reality shock and soul about times in the building, yeah. It's all the roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplifting nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation. That keep me strong. Say it's a rocky road. We are trodden Babylon, yet they want to fill we head with confusion. Yo, that's why you got to know. Don't make them brainwash we with the media, the music and TV. Say listen to them radio. All you hear is the same song like them DJ. They can't find no selection. Switch on me stereo. I'm pushing me CD, cause them profit me. I listen to teach me. It's on the roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplifting nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation. That keep me strong. The roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplifting nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation. That keep me strong. Say we no care about bling bling, your chain and your ring ring. Say we no business about your car and your rims. Say enough of them a murderer. I tell the whole world and I rock one like them really proud of what them doing. Yo, that's why me like me roots, cause Cause it fill me up with truth, it give me knowledge and enough overstanding. Hey, me listen R&B and hip-hop, all the bashman still a job, but it's the reggae flag, that's what time flying. Me off to sing the roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplift the nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation, and that keep me strong. Roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplift the nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation, and that keep me strong. I know say reggae where me loving on my heart, me can't part. Me love it from the start. Say ever since Solo was a little baby child, me daddy put on Desmond Decker and me off the start smile. Me feel it in the one drop, hit you in the right spot. Keeps me on me toes, me coulda never slack. Hey, say what I live bang bang by 827 splash. It's a must, turn the volume to the max. It on the roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplift the nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation, and that keep me strong. The roots rock reggae meditation. Tune into me station, uplift the nation, yeah. Say roots rock meditation, and that keep me strong. Say it's a rocky road, we are trodden Babylon, yet they want to fill we head with confusion. Yo, that's why you got to know. Don't make them brainwash we with the media, the music and TV. Say listen to them radio, all you hear is the same song like them DJ. They can't find no selection. Switch on me stereo, I'm pushing me CD, cause them profit me, I listen to teach me.
I shaved my head as a rally cry, as a personal reminder that this is life and death.
It's incredible, the degree of illness.
Dr. Ed Lathan is one of the thousands of doctors and nurses who are part of the battle against the COVID pandemic. Lathan says those harrowing images posted on Facebook of an overcrowded ER at Jamaica Hospital in Queens have been mirrored at hospitals all over his area.
It's been 17 hours since I got here this morning at 7 o'clock. I arrived, there's been no ICU beds. We've had multiple resuscitations and intubations. Patients are critically ill. You don't have opportunity to sit down, to eat, to drink, barely to go to the bathroom.
This virus has affected everybody. And so I'm sleeping in the garage because I don't want to bring the enemy home with me. We bring them to our ICU, we put them on the ventilator. The problem is that every single COVID patient that we get isn't leaving. Every patient is still on the ventilator, still incredibly ill. That's another bed, another nurse.
And the nurses, they're afraid. I don't want to bring it home to my kids. I don't want to bring it home to my family.
The most disconcerting thing is that we're losing staff members. Our nurses are sick.
But despite that risk, everyday nurses are still answering the call to deal with the flood of COVID patients.
Right here,
like at this LA hospital.
this is beginning the check-in process for patients that will drive in. Nurses are ready, geared up, and ready for whatever's to come. So this is our ICU. So I'm just getting to my car now after a long, almost 14-hour day.
But the intensity of the long hours take a toll.
8 years ago, I took on an oath to care for patients, and they're dying alone in a hospital room without family, and then their families are grieving alone because they're in isolation. It hurts.
In Georgia, nurse Carly Rice told us about a FaceTime call she had with a dying patient's family who were unable to see their loved one in person.
It's so hard to sit there and hold your patient's hand while their family members are sitting there telling them they love them and it's not goodbye, it's see you later.
It was just an amazing connection, you know, although it was just FaceTime. Nurse Carly grabbed Grandma's hand and Grandma started to squeeze her hand. I started to say, well, I love you, I miss you. Nurse Carly is amazing. The world needs tons of Nurse Carlys.
You couldn't fix it, but you certainly gave the family maybe a little bit of peace.
I hope so. I really do. I pray about it a lot, but it still wears you down.
Families are put in such a difficult position right now.
So what keeps you going every day? I mean, this just sounds like it's so utterly depressing.
My patients, honestly, just today, you know, as we are rooting on our patient as he was going to be extubated, our first COVID patient to be extubated, meaning the breathing tube taken out, and we're giving him thumbs up and we're dancing in front of his room. And I mean, that's what keeps me going.
First COVID extubation.
The best moment is when I get home to see these little monkeys. Hi.
I can't touch her, remember?
How's your day? Yeah. Okay, but I can't get close to you. Let me go change, okay?
It's a difficult time, but we're rising to the challenge, and we're going to stay in this until we can defeat it.
We cannot forget our healthcare workers, and when you see those parents go home and they can't even hug their own children until they get that gear off. Matt Gutman, our thanks to you.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
There are now more than 4 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide. This milestone comes just 2 weeks after the world hit 3 million cases, meaning the pandemic is spreading with no signs of slowing down. More than a third of global cases come from the US, but there are new hotspots cropping up, like Brazil and Russia. People protesting against the government clashed with police officers on Sunday at a Hong Kong mall. They used pepper pellets to try to break up the rioters. Anti-government protests in Hong Kong were common during the second half of last year, before the pandemic. But now with social distancing, it's harder for people to come together.
呢個政府咧喺疫情當中咧，佢實施咗呢個限聚令啦。咁呢個限聚令係變相嘅將我哋集會嘅自由打壓咗落去嘅，就唔單止係市民嘅人權，係連其他宗教嘅活動都唔可以去聚集，即係唔可以聚會。我覺得呢個係嚴重侵犯緊人權嘅。
Three senior officials guiding the American response to the pandemic, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, were in self-quarantine on Saturday. This is after they had come into contact with someone who had tested positive for the virus. The other two officials are Robert Redfield, the head of the CDC, and the FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn. A nurse in Turkey gave her mom a bouquet of flowers this Mother's Day, but the real gift this year meant much more than that. She had helped nurse her mother and father back to health after they were transferred to her ward for coronavirus treatment. Thankfully, both have been discharged from the hospital, but because of social distancing, the pair still have to stay apart.
Çok duygulandım, çok mutlu oldum. Ama orada yatarken en büyük şey ona sarılamamaktı.
Nightclubs and bars in Seoul, Korea were closed on Sunday after a patient had visited some of them, which might have caused an outbreak. At least 54 cases have connections to places in the club district, a neighborhood that's popular with Koreans and foreigners. Officials are now trying to track down about 2,000 people who've gone to the clubs. The streets of Paris were quiet on Sunday, but people are looking forward to things getting a little busier again. Sunday marks the last day of the strict lockdown in the city, one of the measures imposed to try to help contain the spread of the novel coronavirus. The city has been under lockdown for more than 50 days, but as of Monday, France will start easing up on its lockdown restrictions. No club? No problem. Germans practiced the ancient art of chair dancing as they hopped along to a DJ on Saturday night at the country's very first drive-in rave. The night was complete with confetti and a lot of horn honking. Thanks for watching Global News. If you want to stay up to date on the latest breaking national and international news, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
I'm wishing on a star to follow where you are. I'm wishing on a dream to follow what it means. And I wish on all the rainbows that I see. I wish on all the people who would agree. I wish on tomorrow praying it'll come. And I wish on a love that we've never done. I'm wishing on a star.
Reaching into silence for someone I knew. Each new day, so overgrown. The reasons to fight, the reasons I know. Gotta give it all. Throw it into the sea.
starlight in the sky on my darkest day. I'm feeling the love, emotions run over me. You help me stand up to the face of what curses me. 'Cause you're never too far, you're only a day away. You are the compass in my heart that helps me navigate. Whenever you're here, we cherish the moment. 'Cause every second with you is perfect. You're more than the sun, you're more than the moon to me. You're more than the starlight in the sky on my darkest day. I'm feeling the love, emotions run over me. You help me stand up to the face of what curses me. 'Cause you're never too far, you're only a day away. You are the compass in my heart that helps me navigate. Whenever you're here, we cherish the moment. 'Cause every second with you is perfect. Cause I feel your love,
here for a good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, good time.
Won't you come away with me, come away with me.
my love.
workers take to protect the public. The Comfort's very first coronavirus case, as we understand it, was one of its own workers.
That's true, and that worker is isolated, separated from the rest of the people on the ship for their safety and the workers' safety. Listen, you know, the governor of New York had asked President Trump, can we start bringing COVID patients on the ship, not just non-COVID? And the president has agreed. And patients will not only come from New York, they're going to start coming from New Jersey, which is just right across the river behind me. And that's to help relieve some of the pressure on the New Jersey hospitals, too.
Around the country this morning, some health systems are being pushed to the brink in what could be the most critical week for the coronavirus crisis yet. An EMS coordinator told us that he got an emotional reaction when he helped to bring in emergency staffing at an overwhelmed New Jersey hospital.
There were tears in their eyes, and easily to see because about all you're showing when you're with full protection are your eyes.
In other hot zones like Illinois, they added more than 1,000 cases in a single day, bringing the total there to more than 12,000 cases. In Michigan, the Detroit Free Press reports that the state's largest hospital system has 1,500 workers all showing COVID symptoms. Meanwhile, the Henry Ford Health System in Detroit says at least 700 of its workers have already tested positive. The Army Corps of Engineers is now transforming Detroit's convention center into a 1,000-bed field hospital. It will be one of 22 field hospitals across 18 states.
We hope to be done by the 9th of April, and that includes putting beds into it.
In Pennsylvania, a nursing home reportedly says all 450 of its residents are presumed to be positive. At a long-term care facility in Maryland, 14 deaths have been reported. And at a rehab facility in Virginia, they've lost 28 patients due to the coronavirus.
I think what we've learned over the last month is just how much asymptomatic transmission seems to be contributing to the outbreak.
In New York, military personnel are now treating coronavirus patients at the Javits Convention Center in Manhattan.
We're mobilizing in the same way that we mobilized to go to war.
Around the country, some healthcare workers have told CBS News that their hospitals are warning them not to talk to the media about the lack of personal protective equipment or hazardous work conditions. But Michael Pappas, a resident at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, says he believes he has a duty to speak out.
I do not want it to be on my conscience that I didn't speak out about what's going on in these hospitals. I would rather get sick and die knowing that I spoke out, whether or not I'm targeted, whether or not I lose my job.
Strong words from the doctor there. Listen, the governor of New York has extended the stay-at-home order through the end of the month, and he's actually upped the fines for people caught violating that order and not socially distancing to $1,000. That's what you'll pay if you are ticketed by the police. Also, the mayor of New York City is looking at what would happen if the morgues here in the city become overwhelmed. They are not there yet, and there was a wild rumor that bodies would be buried in parks. That is not the case, the state and the city says. They are simply looking at one place in the Bronx, which is an island where bodies could be buried if the morgues are overwhelmed, but we are not there yet. Anthony.
All right, David, thank you.
When I go up on being a because
I didn't come to work for this. When we grow up, we all want to make a difference. At the Royal Melbourne Hospital, we are committed to providing the best possible care for our patients. But in order to do this, we need to ensure the safety of the people who provide that care. We understand long waits and being in hospital can be stressful, but any acts of violence and aggression are unacceptable. We want all of our staff, patients, consumers and visitors to feel safe and respected. We appreciate your patience, and we will help you as soon as we can with the best possible care. Please help us help you.
One of the other stories we're watching today is what's going on in Hong Kong. Hospital staff there have walked off the job because of their growing concerns about the coronavirus. Our Chris Brown is now in Hong Kong, and he's going to be bringing us coverage from there. Right now, outside one of the largest hospitals in Hong Kong with the latest live details on this strike. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Heather. A lot of anxiety here, certainly from healthcare workers in this city of 7-odd million people. Of course, they are right on the front lines, and the border with China is not far from me here at all. So what we've seen today, the first day of what's going to be appears to be anyway, rotating strikes. Today it was the turn of non-essential healthcare workers to man the picket lines, and tomorrow it's going to be doctors and nurses. This is all fueled by the anxiety over what happened here 17 years ago with SARS. For a lot of people, the circumstances are very, very similar. A similar virus coming from a similar source, and in that case it left 300 people dead. So that's why you've got the healthcare workers speaking out the loudest today, demanding that the Hong Kong government go further than what it has and seal off this territory from the rest of China, shut down all of its borders, land, sea, and even air. We had a chat with some of the people on the picket line today.
To urge the government to close the borders immediately, to ban the people with Chinese passport or people who have been to China, to stop them from entering to Hong Kong to spread the coronavirus. We are afraid that there will be a community outbreak soon, like what happened in 2003, the SARS outbreak.
Again, as you say, Chris, those hospital workers calling for a full border closure. We heard already today from Carrie Lam. What is she saying? What is the Hong Kong government saying on this?
Well, she took a step towards what they want, but she didn't go all the way. Hong Kong says it will now close 10 of its 13 border crossings. There's still going to be, of course, the airport. That's not been shut down, although some flights have been curtailed, and some of the bridges will still be open as well. But the high-speed trains have been stopped. Carrie Lam said, in explaining why they didn't go all the way, simply that there's too much commerce, too much at stake between Hong Kong and China for them to completely shut things down. Let's hear from her.
Our strategy is really to consolidate as much as possible the existing control points. Now it's really down to, excluding the airport, there are only two. One is the Shenzhen Bay, the other is the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge. And the additional benefit of doing that is we are channeling all cross-border traffic into these two cross-border control points. And because of the inconvenience that we have caused to people as a result, so the numbers will come down. And I have proven.
So the political context for this, of course, is very important. All summer long, we were here then. We saw the protests against Beijing's rule about the curtailment of democracy. So you have a lot of distrust already here between many people in Hong Kong and Carrie Lam and her government. So, folks that we've talked to said this can go two ways. One, perhaps if the government handles this well, if the border is sealed off, in their opinion, that might go some way to restoring some of that lost trust. But on the other hand, and perhaps from the healthcare workers we've talked to, maybe a more likely outcome, you're just going to see that sense of anxiety and that distrust with the government increase. Heather.
Chris, really appreciate it. Thank you. Chris Brown is going to be bringing us coverage out of Hong Kong today, live with us this morning outside that hospital.
Where are the masks going? Are they going out the back door?
I have been wearing this surgical mask for 2 days.
I'm on the third day of using my N95.
They've been delivering for years 10 to 20,000 masks, okay.
How do we go from 10,000 masks
to 300,000?
I'll tell you how as a healthcare worker, because we have a pandemic.
The richest country in the Western world in 2020.
The strongest economy in the world.
This is actual real life in the hospital now. They give you a paper bag.
Paper bag where I store a face shield and an N95 mask.
And I have to bring it to and from work every day. Do you think that that sounds safe?
Clean it between patients, use it until it breaks. Unacceptable.
Especially because I am 16 weeks pregnant.
We're delivering millions and millions of different products, and all we do is hear that, can you get some more?
To say that we are not using our masks correctly or that we're hoarding them.
I don't think it's hoarding. I think it's maybe worse than hoarding.
That's completely preposterous.
What we're seeing hospital workers do is actually going out and finding protective equipment in whatever possible way we can.
When you are intubating a patient, particles from the patient are released into the air, and it becomes increasingly dangerous for anybody that's in the immediate vicinity.
Without this PPE, we won't need the ventilators because none of us will be around to run them.
We're at risk. The patients are at risk. Our families who we're going home to, they're at risk. The grocery store clerks that I go buy my groceries from, they're at risk.
We need proper PPE and we need supplies of it today. Not next week, not in 2 weeks, not in a month. We need it now.
I'm not going to give up, no matter what. I still love my job, and I'm going to do everything in my power to save lives.
President Trump, at some point you're going to face the end of your own life. Think about how you should be treating the people who are going to be taking care of you.
We shouldn't be losing talented healthcare workers because of a lack of protective equipment when people are just showing up trying to do their job. It's wrong. We should all be ashamed that it's happening.
The global economy is in a state of paralysis. Businesses are closed, production has ground to a halt. In many Western countries, governments are dishing out generous aid packages to business owners, freelancers, and companies in need. But in many developing and emerging economies, the corona crisis hits people with full force. As a result, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has urged rich countries to do more for those that are less prepared. Otherwise, he warned, we face the nightmare of the disease spreading like wildfire in developing nations with millions of deaths. The pandemic affects us all, yes, but while rich countries can cushion the economic fallout from the crisis, others like Mexico stare into an abyss.
The virus has already claimed some 200 lives in Mexico, but so far there have been no lockdown measures like in other countries. And so case numbers are rising as people continue to gather, including to protest. Here, hundreds of waiters air their grievances in front of the presidential palace. Their restaurants have closed and they've lost their jobs. If I don't have that income, I can't pay my rent, I can't pay my bills, and I can't support my daughter. From today, we can no longer survive day to day by being at home. So we're exposing ourselves to come out and congregate. We know that we're exposing ourselves to the virus and we're exposed to the contagion. Mexico's president offered encouragement in a speech on Sunday. He also announced a rescue package focused solely on supporting the poor. We will defeat the coronavirus, we'll revive the economy, and Mexico will continue to stand up and show the world its glory and its greatness. But for now, Acapulco's famed beaches remain empty. Tourists won't offer much help for the foreseeable future. And there are great concerns about another, perhaps more important economic sector, oil, where prices have fallen sharply. And Mexico isn't alone among emerging economies. The collapse of tourism and oil prices has hit nations from Russia to Brazil, India and South Africa.
And for more, I'm joined by the head of the United Nations Development Programme in New York, Achim Steiner. Achim Steiner, good to have you with us. Now, emerging or economies, developing countries, they are very much exposed to this crisis, this virus crisis. Which region worries you the most in terms of the pandemic and the following economic decline?
Well, as of this morning, we know that 212 countries and territories are affected by COVID-19. So the concern of all of us, but also of the United Nations, is for all countries. But indeed, as you point out, in many parts of the world, Africa perhaps being one key region of the world, but also parts of Asia, Latin America, Central America, are areas where the virus is beginning to impact, both in terms of a crisis in the health system, but then also with the social and economic impacts. And the issue of greatest concern for all of us must be that many of these poorer countries and economies don't have the health system infrastructure to cope, first of all, with the suppression of the virus. Secondly, with also providing the kind of social safety nets that are needed in order to deal with this extraordinary impact. Our sister organization, International Labour Organization, yesterday published new numbers in terms of expected job losses. 195 million jobs lost, potentially. This is a number that is without precedent, and that is a shock to not only our economies, but our societies, to livelihoods, especially when you bear in mind that over 60% of people employed in the world are employed in the informal sector. No work means no livelihood, means no social safety net. These are the front lines of the battle in dealing with this pandemic, which is both a health crisis, it is becoming a social and economic and a developmental crisis, and it is one that requires us to work together in ways as we have never been challenged to do so before.
And I mean, the sinister scenario that you're describing here also tells us that this virus, of course, causes havoc everywhere. And even rich nations are struggling to deal with the economic fallout from the pandemic. How then can poorer countries hope to cope with it?
Well, I think the first priority must be what the WHO has told us all, which is to suppress the virus. This is the first line of defense, and much of the work of the United Nations, of the international community right now, must be focused on helping countries to, first of all, be able to stabilize their health systems and to have that health systems response in place. Secondly, and these are the programs that are urgently needed, is to provide fiscal means. Governments need money right now, first of all, to respond to the health crisis, but secondly, also to an unfolding social and human and economic and development crisis. And this means having resources available with which to finance mitigation measures, cash transfer programs, being able to stabilize local parts of the economy. And as you also said, countries very often are now confronted with even the consequences of the virus somewhere else in the world. Take small island developing states. Many of them rely on tourism. Tourism has imploded. Very often that's 30, 40, 50% of the GDP of these nations. This is economic collapse.
Right. I mean, what you're describing here is really that we have to give a helping hand to each other, even though we're affected by this pandemic ourselves. And this at a time when multilateralism is weakened and people have become more egoistic. There's more nationalism around. Do you think that this has weakened our ability to give a global response to this crisis?
Well, perhaps in the first reflex, there is a tendency to look after oneself, and this is understandable, it is natural, and I think every country is confronted with unprecedented challenges right now. But this virus has taught us one thing, and that is that it is a global pandemic. We can only succeed in controlling and ultimately overcoming this pandemic by working together. There is no go-it-alone solution. And therefore, the ability of richer nations to also step up right now, first of all, through the kinds of measures that have been proposed through the International Monetary Fund, but also looking at issues of debt relief and debt cancellation in order to allow countries that are in need of help not to have to use the funds that they receive from the international community to pay off debtors. Right now, there is a need for massive investment in developing countries. It will rely on the richer part of the world, but it is also in our common interest, because even from a perspective of economic recovery, the markets into which industrialized nations will sell after this pandemic are the markets of also the developing world. So there is a common interest, an enlightened self-interest, as much as the need for solidarity right now in order to massively ramp up this support, because otherwise we will not only see the economic collapse, there are social, geopolitical consequences that I think none of us have either considered so far clearly enough and that need urgent attention.
All right. Help others to help ourselves, basically. Achim Steiner, the head of the United Nations Development Programme in New York. Thank you so much for your time. And now time for your questions. Questions you sent us on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, or via email. And as always, our resident corona expert, DW's Derek Williams, stands ready to provide some answers.
Are fatality rates of COVID-19 related to blood types?
I'm not aware of any studies looking at fatality rates and blood groups for COVID-19, but this is a really interesting question, because with other types of viruses, blood types have been shown to affect susceptibility to infection as well as severity of outcomes, though we still don't know exactly why. A recent preliminary study carried out by Chinese researchers did indeed discover what they think are some connections between blood type and susceptibility to the new coronavirus. It says people with blood group A did indeed seem to be more likely to catch it than other groups, while blood group O appeared less likely to get it. That data is still unconfirmed, but if it's correct, it could have an impact later in clinical practice. But the differences, if they're there, are unlikely to be really major.
What risk could COVID-19 pose to pregnant women and their unborn children?
If you're pregnant or have a newborn these days, I'm sure you're probably frightened even more than the rest of us. The WHO has a question and answers page dedicated to you. Some of the key takeaways, though, are that first, there's currently no evidence that pregnant women are at higher risk of severe illness than anyone else. So the precautions they should take are simply the same as those we're all taking. We still don't know if a pregnant woman can pass the virus along to her baby during pregnancy or delivery, but the WHO also recommends prioritizing pregnant women with symptoms for testing, as they may need special care if they have the disease. And finally, it says women with COVID-19 can breastfeed if they wish to, but they should wear a mask if one is available. They should wash their hands before and after touching the baby, and also regularly disinfect surfaces in the household.
Can you protect your lungs from COVID-19 by giving up smoking?
In this pandemic, smokers are in particular danger for a couple of different reasons. First, when it comes to possibly contracting the disease, a smoker's lips regularly come into contact with their fingers, which is one of those things that you really want to avoid. And of course, regular smoking also leads at some point to lung disease and reduced lung capacity. Those are two comorbidities that can have a major impact on outcomes if you do catch COVID-19. One study of data from around 1,100 patients in China indicated that severe disease and case fatality were over 2.5 times higher for current smokers than people who had never smoked, which really shouldn't come as a surprise. So, Jacob, there's never been a better time to quit.
And a quick look to India, where millions are required to stay indoors for 3 weeks to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Among other measures, the state of Punjab installed a so-called COVID-19 safety station where workers can wash their hands and have their temperature taken before being sprayed with disinfectant. A similar initiative for people on motorbikes was started in Chennai.
If there was ever a good time to enter intensive care, this is not it. They are now the red zones in this war, where patients fight for their lives and medics try to save them. For the first time in the UK, our cameras were given access to a hospital treating critically ill coronavirus patients. 2 died here overnight at the Royal Bournemouth. 7 others are in this unit, 6 of them are on ventilators. An 8th was moved out this afternoon. Linda New had feared for her life.
It's been hard. You just got to... I just wanted to get through it for my children. Without this lot, I wouldn't have done it. It's been so, so good.
Did you ever think it would get this bad?
No. No, not in a million years.
This is the COVID ward where Linda will now be treated. It is a lonely road to recovery, where patients are kept in isolation and staff nurse as well as comfort.
There are 2 patients in here that have both tested positive for coronavirus. They've both been very ill, and Alan Hunt over there is just 62. He's been here for 8 days. How has it been?
Been long. You know, it's very easy. It's just so easy to catch, but you just can't get rid of it once you got it. And it affected both my lungs, so I think they're on the repair. But even though I'm still getting out of breath by doing anything at all.
ICU, there's 13 occupied in total.
Alan hopes to leave tomorrow. If he does, it frees up a bed for these nurses to reallocate.
I think they've got 4 cycles on 17, but they're all in use, couldn't pull them out.
Earlier at their handover meeting, they told me every death here takes its toll.
Unfortunately, within the last 24 hours, we've had 2 deaths.
That must be quite hard for you.
Yes, so basically all the patients that died last night, if you're probably aware, visiting and visitors are not allowed. So
So I've got 2 runners just helping out with everything. So you've got enough staff. I've got 2 runners that are helping everybody.
There is little time for reflection in this job, though. By the afternoon, the emergency department is full. No patients can be admitted until one leaves.
This is the red zone. There is no, all the patients are behind closed doors. Recess is just through the 2 sets of double doors.
Aidan Siggers is the lead consultant here today.
We're all having to learn how to do this. You know, no one's ever done this before, and part of the way that we manage things is by listening to what's been happening in other countries, in Italy and elsewhere, and learning the lessons that they tell us.
Are you apprehensive?
Not really, as long as I know that I'm doing the right sort of washing techniques and
PPE is all right, so yeah.
So you've got a bit of eczema.
I do.
Yeah, that's the way. That's washing your hands over and over, isn't it?
We followed her for a bit as she moved from patient to patient.
I have asthma, so it is scary, but we sort of have a duty to our patients, so it is the split between looking out for my own safety, but then also I'm a nurse. But it is scary. Like, I'd be lying if I was saying I wasn't scared.
Where are you taking this patient?
To X-ray, to do a chest X-ray.
That's standard now here. All patients that come through ED have a chest X-ray.
Every member of staff in the red zone here has to treat each patient as if they have coronavirus. They don't know whether they do, but with any symptoms, they have to wear the PPE for their own safety.
Back in critical care, oxygen supply is becoming a concern. Many more patients on ventilation and low levels will need to be addressed.
No, it's something that we normally wouldn't even consider, how much oxygen we can get into the hospital, because we know that normally we don't have the number of patients requiring oxygen therapy. And it's something that we are worried about, that we may unfortunately run out of oxygen supply if we have too many patients needing us.
There are optimistic stories to tell here in Bournemouth. Linda is proof of that, and the nurses felt the need to mark it.
Healthcare systems around the globe are overwhelmed with coronavirus patients. And this is what the challenges faced by hospitals look like. Dr. İlker İnanç Balkan says it's difficult caring for patients while trying to keep healthcare workers and their families safe.
Since the first day, our biggest concern was getting infected ourselves. We have so far been able to keep ourselves safe. Some of our colleagues, however, were not lucky enough.
Essential workers can only take the necessary precautions and hope for the best. Healthcare workers continue to lead the fight against the coronavirus pandemic, working in hospitals' special COVID-19 units. This is the Istanbul Cerrahpaşa Hospital, where almost every COVID-19 patient gets a private room. For the time being, hospital capacities in Turkey have not been overwhelmed. Hospitals still have a 40% vacancy in intensive care despite COVID-19.
The healthcare system in Turkey, the hospital capacities, the intensive care unit capacities are really very high.
Doctors insist that if a person is feeling unwell, they should seek treatment.
We're different from other countries. Please don't think that our hospitals are very busy and ignore your symptoms. We have the power and capacity to serve you. Waiting too long might lead to inflammation of the lungs, requiring intensive care and intubation.
Before the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Turkey, the Ministry of Health had already started procuring medicine for a possible outbreak.
At first, the unknowns about the disease was concerning us. However, our Ministry of Health prepared a protocol and informed us on the procedures to follow from the first day. We have no problems with procuring medicine from our hospital pharmacy. Having these at hand since the very beginning of the fight against the virus really helped us a lot in performing our jobs better.
The virus is still continuing to spread across the country, yet hospitals are still functioning at a normal level. And doctors are confident the numbers will soon begin to decrease. Furkan Yağmur, TRT World, Istanbul.
I just feel like people think just because we're like a healthcare worker that we are somehow immune to this and we're not. I cried the whole way home. Today was a really rough day. It was a really rough day. It's a really rough shift. I don't know. I just feel like there's only so much anyone can take. I'm tired of walking into rooms and your patient's dead. You just walk into a room and there's a dead body there. I'm tired of calling families and telling them that news. I feel so much sadness for my fellow nurses, and sisters and brothers that have lost their life taking care of people. I feel bad for the patients who aren't living, especially the ones that are hanging on by a thread. I don't know, I just feel like people think just because we're like a healthcare worker that we are somehow immune to this, and we're not. I cried the whole way home in the Uber tonight, and the driver was like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" I was like, I don't think people understand how stressful this job is. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but it's so stressful. I wish sometimes people could just understand to give us a break. Everyone is trying hard. Everyone is trying hard. We all are. We got in this field to do a bad job. We're stressed just like everybody else, and sometimes I think people just forget we're human too. We're human just like everybody else. We have emotions. The same thing that affects you would affect me. I just can't show it at the moment. I feel like I have no one to talk to. I can't call my mom because then she'll be worried about me. She never wanted me to come here from the beginning. I can't call my sisters because I don't want to stress them out. I have friends that are nurses that would understand, but I'm pretty sure they're going through something similar, and I don't want to stress them out anymore. So you cry in the Uber on the way home, or in the bathroom to yourself, but everything's basically to yourself. There's no one. But if your staff is not doing well, then who's going to take care of your patients? We're having 10, 14 patient assignments, 14 patients. 7 of them can't even, bless their soul, they're bed bound, they can't do anything for themselves. How can I take care of 14 people? We have 1 tech, they have 30 patients. It's so bad here, you guys just don't understand. I know people are going to watch this and laugh, and I don't care. I just feel like someone should put raw emotions out there about like what the fuck is going on here.
Welcome to Public Health on Call, a new podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Our focus is the novel coronavirus. I'm Josh Sharfstein, a faculty member at Johns Hopkins and also a former secretary of Maryland's Health Department. Our goal with this podcast is to bring evidence and experts to help you understand today's news about the novel coronavirus and what it means for tomorrow. If you have questions, you can email them to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Albert Wu, an internist and professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He is co-director of the RISE service at Johns Hopkins Medicine. RISE stands for Resilience in Stressful Events. This service provides support for healthcare workers. Let's listen. Thank you, Dr. Wu, for joining me. I understand you've been studying the mental health of caregivers for some time now. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I'm an internist. I'm a general internist. But I've always been interested in how, in particular, stressful incidents in the hospital affect healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and in fact, all the other many people who work in the hospital. And we found that when bad things happen, which happens quite frequently when people are sick and you're trying very hard to make them better, that those healthcare workers are often traumatized by the same incidents that cause patients harm. And they can become very depressed, anxious, sometimes fearful, feel like they hadn't done everything that they could have. And this can actually hamper them in their work, both in their personal lives and in their ability to do a really good job of taking care of patients.
Wow.
Sort of a principle we've worked on is that healthcare workers need to be healthy, both physically and mentally, in order to do their best job taking care of patients.
Which brings us to the unprecedented situation we're now facing with the coronavirus. What do you think the key issues are for healthcare workers and their mental health right now?
Well, the key issues now are a few. First of all, as you said, this is really an unfamiliar situation for healthcare workers. They're rarely in a position where they themselves are at risk. There's also just not enough information. People just don't know what to expect, and they're afraid. Healthcare workers are worried about their patients who are desperately ill, and it's frightening to see people so ill. They also are afraid that they themselves may become infected. If they do, they're afraid they may go off and infect their own family members or other people that they care for outside of the hospital. And in many ways, they feel frustrated because we've had a shortage of supplies. And they feel like they're not being given all the tools they need to do the job, the very difficult job that they've been charged with doing. All of this makes what is already a very stressful work environment that much worse.
And aside from the obvious risk of actually getting sick with coronavirus, what are the other consequences of that kind of stress?
Well, the other kinds of stress are that people may simply not be able to, people may have trouble sleeping, they may be anxious, they may feel like withdrawing actually, and they may not have as much reserve as they would normally have for taking care of people, for giving the kind of compassion and caring that patients need so much when they're sick in the hospital.
So is that just something we're going to have to deal with, or there are things that can be done to mitigate all those stresses and anxieties?
Well, I think that we can do two things. First of all, we need to communicate effectively with healthcare workers. We need to let them know exactly as much information as we have up to the moment, because people, when they're so stressed, need two kinds of support. They need information support, and they need emotional support. One thing which we think is very important is to really normalize people's feelings. That is to say, it is natural for you to be feeling this way. In fact, it would be odd if you were not anxious and worried, at least a little bit. And we should encourage them to express those feelings. And then there are support resources that people have, and we should encourage people to identify those resources that they have in their own lives, what they usually do to make themselves feel better. Now, some of those things are not so available as we are under more or less isolation.
Right. So people like to go to the movies. That may not be possible.
But there is Netflix. We can also offer them support sort of ahead of time, proactively, and encourage them, get them to talk about their feelings, be empathetic in the hospital. I think that's another thing that's important is to have groups of supporters who systematically provide this kind of support. And then we need to support those supporters, giving them information about how to do the kind of psychological first aid that might be necessary, or crisis management.
And I know this is not a theoretical discussion for you. We're talking early in the morning, in part because you have different kind of responsibilities at Johns Hopkins. Could you just generally explain the kinds of services that you're making available for caregivers?
Well, we are trying to coordinate the resources that we already have in the hospital. And fortunately, We have a lot of people who are concerned about the well-being of our own staff. Again, we recognize that for them to do their job enthusiastically and to be able to do the extra hard work that they need to do now, they need to feel well and fit and enthusiastic about doing their work. So we're trying to maintain that morale as much as possible. We're not going to succeed if we're not able to do that. We do have a few resources. One is a program that we call RISE, which stands for Resilience in Stressful Events. And we have a very multidisciplinary group of workers, nurses, doctors, social workers, chaplains, who are basically on call for healthcare staff if they're feeling badly, if they feel overly stressed. They can call a number and someone will call back and then show up in person to listen, to do a little psychological first aid, and to mostly provide emotional support. We also have chaplains who are in the hospital all the time. We have a call-in service, which just about every hospital has. It's just a staff assistance program. And in fact, there's someone who can answer the phone and perhaps talk someone down, encourage them or support them over the phone at any time.
And what about, the staff that maybe people don't think about every day, but who are really essential to the COVID response?
Oh, that's a great question. It's not surprising that the people who are taking care of COVID patients are going to be stressed and worried about their own health in many ways. But there are people you wouldn't think of, people in laundry or in sanitation or in food service. They are having contact with patients or with materials that have potentially been contaminated. They also don't have as much information in many ways as the doctors or nurses do. And when you don't have enough information, you tend to assume the worst. You tend to imagine the worst possible situation, and rumors can spread very quickly across a small group based on that information vacuum.
Well, it definitely has crossed my mind and the mind of others about the stress that might be affecting people throughout the hospital. But what can you do for people who have jobs that aren't even direct, patient contact jobs in some cases, but maybe quite stressed because of what's going on for all the reasons that you said?
Well, a couple of things. One is you can make sure that they get information. These are people who do not have who are not sort of up to the minute with all the data that we have at the very front line or at the management level of the hospital. So you can keep talking to them. You can
answer their questions. Answer their questions.
Absolutely answer the questions. And they are likely to have questions that might not have occurred to you, but which, if you think about it for a minute, are completely logical. So listening first and answering the questions. And a final thing, which I think cannot be emphasized enough, is to thank them for the job that they're doing. If people don't feel like they're being recognized, or if they don't feel like they're being appreciated, if they feel like the people at the top know everything and are in control, but they don't know so much, they feel out of control. That's a terrible feeling, and may feel like, why am I doing this? And be inclined to even call in sick. I think that in some places, as the stress is mounted, more and more people have called in sick for unclear reasons. And it may simply be kind of logically, they're afraid, they're not sure that they're doing they're doing anything that's making a difference. I think they need to be reminded that they are crucial to the functioning of the institution. They're kind of the backbone of the whole system, and we all have to be there and show up and do a good job for us to work, for all of this to work.
So there may be health professionals who are listening to this podcast, maybe going to and from work, hearing you talk. If you had a message for them, what would it be?
I would say that it is, if you're a little bit worried about yourself, about your patients, about your family, I think that is completely normal. you should talk to other people about those concerns. And if you have questions, you should pass them up the line and get your managers and leaders to give you the information you need. You should think about your own life and identify the kinds of support resources that you've always used and avail yourself of those, both at work and at home. It may be talking to people. It may be escaping a little to watch a film or a movie or a cat video. It might be reading or going for a walk off by yourself. And you should make sure that you make a little time for yourself, maybe for a short personal meditation. If you're someone who has religion, for a religious observance. If you see that some of your staff are anxious or need help, you should talk to them and you should offer them support. Something that's really important is to give yourself a little credit. You should appreciate the important work that you yourself are doing, and you should both give gratitude to yourself and thank your colleagues. I think that a little extra kindness goes a long way. This is a very stressful time for all of us.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wu, for joining me and walking us through these really critical issues for healthcare workers, caregivers, and really everyone who is involved in the medical response to the coronavirus epidemic.
Thank you very much for the chance to talk about these issues. I think it's very important. You're doing an important service for all of us.
Thank you for listening to Public Health on Call, a new podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Please send questions to be covered in future podcasts to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. This podcast is produced by Josh Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Lamari Morales. Audio production by Niall Owen McCusker with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Thank you for listening.
Step by step, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to find a way through this.
We're working really, really hard in the hospitals, our nurses, our techs, all the docs.
It's about staggering when people get it so that the hospitals can cope.
We're going to go through an awful lot of these.
All across Puget Sound, people have been stepping up and donating personal protective equipment.
We stay at work for you. You stay at home for us.
Just know we're all with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, doctors and nurses.
I want to thank the staff of the NHS, those who work in social care, all of you. You are the front line in this war against this virus, and we all pay tribute to you.
Ellos con su entrega, con su sacrificio nos protegen a todos y merecen el reconocimiento y la gratitud de todos.
Dispositivi di protezione individuale, quindi il camice, i calzari, la cuffia, i guanti che sono da cambiare rispetto a quelli che ha addosso, la mascherina, chirurgica, gli occhiali protettivi.
Human beings have an instinct for survival. That means making masks from whatever they have and trying to help each other.
Queste sono le mascherine che abbiamo appena ritirato e presumo che per settimana prossima. Ma questi sono proprio gli ultimi degli ultimi, gli ultimi perché sono malati di una malattia grave che hanno per forza bisogno di uscire da casa per venire in ospedale, altrimenti muoiono. E sono ultimi perché sto trasportando quelli soli.
Per ritirare i farmaci che le persone comunicano direttamente all'ufficio dei servizi sociali. I farmacisti lo sanno già, preparano il sacchetto, hanno spesso anche già la ricetta in mano.
Volunteers are preventing more deaths, keeping the human spirit alive.
When we launched the appeal last night, we hoped to get 250,000 volunteers over a few days. But I can tell you that in just 24 hours, 405,000 people have responded to the call.
You're going to give your all over the next few weeks.
To those who are elderly, frail, vulnerable, or with serious underlying health conditions, we have not forgotten about you.
We're always here giving the care to the best of our abilities.
It does feel very much like we're in it together.
And be ready and prepared, and that's what we're all trying to do.
I'm really scared and I'm willing to be in work. I want to be in work. I'm not a hero.
That's a lovely touch, the free coffee for NHS workers.
They need it right now, yeah, definitely. They're under a lot of pressure, and it's a small token, isn't it, just to show our support.
We all pull together, it'll be better.
Less social interaction.
Well, fair enough. I turn the key and I don't leave it. I don't mind. If the government says do it, that is good enough for me.
I'm feeling fairly emotional because I feel for all the children that are in a secondary school setting particularly, but also in a primary school setting, that school provides so much for so many children, and I feel for all the exam classes that won't get the result that they have worked really hard for.
You're fulfilling a fundamental role right now.
Yeah. And, you know, it's our job at the end of the day. We come to look after patients, we still have to look after each other, and that's all we can do at the end of the day.
How proud are you to be an NHS worker
Extremely proud.
At this time?
Extremely proud.
Are your family worried about the role you're going to be playing over the
Yes,
few months?
obviously, you know, but I just think that I came into the NHS to care for patients. That's my first and most foremost role, and that's what I'll be doing.